Hello everyone, my name is Angely and I'm here to present to you about a high carb diet and its effect on insulin resistance. My goal was to explore what kind of effects are high carbs and high sugar diets having on leptin resistance, and how can we prevent leptin resistance and its contribution to chronic disease. I know we all know about a high carb diet and love our carbs or maybe even hate them, but I want to explain to you more or less what it looks like to have a high carb and high sugar diet. Carbohydrates are classified as a macronutrient, in which they provide energy for our body. These consist of things like sugars, starches, and fibers. Though they are essential to our diet, they may be harmful in excess. Sugars specifically are the more harmful of the three when taken in excess. Sucrose and fructose are associated with this contribution. This is mostly due to sugars being added in essentially almost all foods we're eating. High fructose corn syrup, for example, is in lots of foods that we're eating and is a key ingredient in a lot of processed foods. Here I have food sources high in carbs that you may want to avoid: potatoes, canned fruits, breads, soda, candy, and processed sugared cereal. Better options for you are eggs, meats, seafood, nuts, dairy, fruits, and vegetables. This image relates total carbs in food source and its effects on the calories in the product. Here we see high, low, and actual sugar content, where we see in the high it has lots of calories, but in the actual it has about a decent amount of calories. Now you're asking, what is leptin and how does it affect our bodies? Leptin is a hormone in our bodies secreted by white adipose tissue that functions to regulate energy homeostasis. Leptin also contributes to a lot of other processes in our body. In other words, this hormone tells our body when to stop eating and when food intake is no longer necessary. Leptin works closely with the brain, the hypothalamus specifically, to send signals to the body on when to stop eating. Overall, leptin can decrease body weight by suppressing appetite and promoting energy expenditure. Leptin resistance and its harmful effects. If our internal receptors stop responding to leptin, meaning our body is no longer getting that signal to stop eating, then leptin begins to accumulate in our bodies. This is what we call leptin resistance. It has a close correlation with obesity. Obesity is a big issue in the US today, and it's the underlying cause of many chronic diseases, such as cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. How can obesity and leptin resistance lead to chronic disease? Leptin is strongly correlated with the fat in our bodies, meaning the more fat we have, the more leptin that is secreted. In the event that the body has reduced sensitivity to leptin, meaning we do not get the signal to stop eating, then a person with high body fat content will have a lot more leptin floating around, and very little sending a signal to stop eating. Thus, an already obese person or already overweight person will eat more, even though their energy needs are sufficiently fulfilled. This places them at higher risk for chronic disease. Foods that are unhealthy in excess, such as carbs and more specifically sugars, will eventually build up and stay in our bodies, in which more fat will be accumulated. Obesity itself is a factor that contributes to disease. The more this situation develops, the more susceptible a person is to chronic disease. This alone can be a risk factor. Now that we have a bit of background, let's talk about the studies on high carb diets and insulin resistance. In this study, mice were either fed high fructose or not, and changes were observed. What was found was that those that were fed high fructose diets were way more susceptible to metabolic disease, things like insulin resistance, high blood glucose, and even high blood pressure. These can all be precursors to chronic illness. In this next study, the Western diet, which is already pretty high in carbs, was compared to an ancestral diet, or that of our ancestors. What was found was that even having fed someone a Westerner diet for a short period of time, they rapidly developed metabolic diseases. This is strong evidence that eating a lot of carbs and unhealthy foods can never have a good effect on your body, and risk of disease that may be more life-threatening. They even go as far as to say that even small amounts cause a direct negative effect on our bodies. From that same study, here it shows the difference in carb density between the two diets. we see that the Western diet is much more sufficient in amount. With all that being said, I want to give some recommendations to you. Studies show that there are ways to decrease risk of insulin resistance that can lead to chronic disease. These include, but are not limited to, food sources such as citrus, ginger, fruits, veggies, nuts, and teas. These are all good sources of a component that can specifically help reduce the amount of leptin circulating in our bodies. Evidence also suggests that whole food and grain-free diets are substantially healthier than modern diets. Fibers work particularly well for decreasing cholesterol levels. This is important for reducing risk of chronic disease such as type 2 and heart disease. As this is a fairly new finding, there isn't much research and evidence on insulin resistance and its overall causes and effects on chronic disease. But from these works of study, we can see that there may be correlations between high-carb sugar diets on leptin resistance and obesity. In turn, these two can go hand in hand to contribute to chronic disease. Make smart and healthy food choices. Obesity alone is a great epidemic here in the US, and just watching this video and listening is the first step to taking back control over your body. Here I have a quote by Walt Disney that says, "The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing." So go out and make this change for your own health. Good luck and thank you.